We're talking with Yolanda Baker, author of Bite Your Bills, Cutting Medical Costs for the Disabled, subtitled How I Got $28,000 Back in Medical Expenses. Yolanda, thank you so much for being with us. And I want to remind everybody that Yolanda is doing some free webinars this week and potentially next week. You can sign up to be a participant in the free webinar by going to her website, biteyourbills.com. Go there and register so that you make sure that you get a spot in those free webinars. Yolanda, I wanted to talk to you about, you detail some things in here because you're an autism mom and you learned as you went. I love the fact that you're so honest that you say, okay, this is how much money I was able to get back in this year, and then I learned, and this is how I got even more back. And you let us benefit from what you've learned. And one of the things that blew my mind immediately was this idea of setting up a medical expense checking account for each member of the family that you're going to have medical expenses for. Talk to us about why that is so pivotal. This is just a great idea.
Now, I must remind everybody out there that this is simple checking account. That's my terminology, the medical savings checking account. I think it's important because it just it's another step in being organized, especially if you're the parent of a special needs child. Because before I did that, it was such a mess. Tax season was twice as difficult, not having all the expenses and all the deposits in one checking account. So when I created that for my son Luke, I thought, well, this is going to make things so much easier. And I do my best to put as much spare change in that account, any sort of, any sort of profits and royalties I get from the book, I deposit it into his account as much as I can, so that any non-reimbursed medical expenses I could take from that savings account or from that checking account. And I also do my best to take a portion of our tax return refund and place it into that account. I think it's just so important. I think that's one of the foundations to having a year-round medical savings. I just think it's so important to start.
I think it's a brilliant idea, and just in terms of the paperwork that, and especially nowadays when checking accounts, you know, and they'll give you the debit card that comes with each checking account. So help me to understand though, is the idea that you put money in there, and then if you're going and you're having something done that's medical and you're paying the medical bill from it, that you pay it from that account, so that you don't have to be tracking things and picking out, you know, you made your mortgage payment in this account and you made you paid the difference in the bill for the MRI, and it's just all on one account.
Yeah, I have to admit that sometimes I do use my other checking accounts, or perhaps even a credit card if I'm not prepared to pay for a particular item, but I need to pay it at that time.
Yeah.
But I do my best to try to pay as many of my son's non-reimbursed expenses from that account.
I think it's a brilliant idea. Talk to me a little bit about, because you detail in here about what happens if your child is on a special diet. Because a lot of us are on the GFCF and sometimes SF diet, and it's expensive. It is very expensive.
It can really rack up.
It really, really can. And you have some recommendations about that as well. So tell us a little bit about what you recommend when you're doing that kind of a diet.
Well, one of the ways I get my audience interested, especially at seminars, is I started off with, did you know bread's deductible? And everybody's like, what? I thought this was going to be a boring tax seminar. But with medical food items, the first thing you have to do in order to get anything deducted is that it has to be prescribed by your physician, whether it's your pediatrician or psychiatrist. You need that note, that prescription from the doctor stating that your child has this particular condition, which requires him to be on this particular diet for the remainder of his life. And we have a prescription from our pediatrician stating that Luke needs to be on a gluten, casein, and soy-free diet. And so what we do is we keep that prescription in our files, and you don't need to, by the way, you don't need to submit that prescription when you're submitting your tax forms, although you do want to have that if you're submitting this information to your tax preparer, because he will probably need to see that.
Okay.
So you have your prescription. That's where you start off. Where the tax deduction comes in is that you take your medical food item. Let's say it's a loaf of bread. And this is perhaps rice bread that your doctor said this is the medical food item that you need. So let's say that loaf of bread is $5. Well, what you need to do is compare it with a regularly priced comparable food item such as a regular loaf of bread. And let's say a regular loaf of bread is currently $2. Well, what you do is you take the difference, which is $3. That $3 is the tax deductible portion of your medical food item.
Okay.
Now, you do need to keep your receipts. And what I have available for my subscribers to my monthly newsletter is I have a customized medical food database that I created for myself. And I also have instructions in the book on how to create a medical food database. It's a little more complicated than that because you're going to also have to be dealing with liquid items, and that gets a little tricky. But if you follow the rules in my book, then that difference is the tax deductible portion of the medical food item.
Well, and I have to say that I love that here in the book you talk about how much time can you afford. And you're very realistic about it, that, you know, time is money. We hear it over and over and over again, and that it will take some time to put these things together. But when you start to add up for us in the book about what kind of money it ends up being, I mean, we get to $28,000. That's nothing to sneeze at. And,
no, it isn't.
And how much time would you spend making $28,000? It might be worth it to make the database. I mean, I think we all have that initial reaction and go, oh, with all the other things I have going on, do I honestly have the time to do that? But if it's gonna save you $10,000 to $28,000, suddenly you make the time, right?
Right. I mean, those little things can really add up, and that is so important for special needs families because there are a lot of little things.
Yeah, and I would imagine that the time, the investment of creating the database, you know, that it's more time intensive in the beginning, but once you've got it up and running, it starts to run itself and it gets a little bit more efficient.
That's right, and I'm hoping that by the summertime I will have an iPad app to help people out.
Nice. Oh, Yolanda, that's a great idea. I also love in here one of the things that you talk about, and I looked at it with shame, about things to do with your health coverage, mistakes not to make. It's here on page 19, and honestly, as a mom, I appreciate that you say I made a lot of mistakes with my health insurance plan the first year of my son's diagnosis. The fact that you admit that already, then I want to read what you say, because you're not trying to be somebody who, oh, I've done it perfectly my entire life. I came out of the womb and understood how to do it, because I sure didn't. And you say, I can't put all the blame on my insurance company. Here were some of my mistakes. Not calling my insurance provider before procedures took place. Not knowing how many times a medical procedure was covered, not obtaining a prescription from my son's health practitioner for a particular medical procedure. And already I'm thinking, I know I can get a prescription for the diet, but I have never taken the time to do that, Yolanda. You go on to talk about making sure that I read and understand the explanation of benefits. That makes me want to run screaming into the street with my hair on fire.
You too?
Yeah, because I look at that and I go, oh, help me. Thank heavens I work with people who can explain it to me. Not following up in a timely manner to resolve denied claims. I think the insurance companies count on us to do that.
Yes. I absolutely agree with you on that. They want us to be, well, I shouldn't be so cold. What I should say is that they want us to be as prepared as possible. Unfortunately, we're not as prepared as we can be. And so, of course, if we're not as prepared as we can be, the insurance company has every right to say, I'm sorry, you know, we don't have the necessary information, or we just cannot cover this.
Yeah.
But there are always ways around that. And I explain that both in my webinars and in the book on how to deal with that.
Yeah, I love this next one. Accepting the price of the procedure instead of shopping around and negotiating a reduced price. Again, that wouldn't even occur to me, Yolanda. So really, really helpful. And the last one, not insisting the denied claims be covered and not researching if the insurance made a mistake. And again, it's time. And you don't mamby-pamby with that at all. You say this does take some time to do it, but look what it can be worth. And I think I can't imagine how much more you were able to do with your child with that $28,000.
It really helped, thank God I have a husband who's a bit more assertive than I am in regards to that, because I didn't see it initially, but my husband saw that there were perhaps some mistakes in our coverage, and he did his research. So did I, but he did his research, and he explained to the insurance company in no uncertain terms that a particular procedure should have been covered, and we were very insistent, well, he was. And eventually they conceded. They agreed that it should have been covered. Well, and I also talk about that in the book and in the webinar. If you don't have the time, or if you feel you're not assertive enough, or if you feel as if you don't have the knowledge or the know-how to get through to your insurance carrier, there are some resources to help you out with that.
Awesome. And I have to say, we all have an inkling that probably, or we fear that probably there's more money that we could be saving to put towards our child's medical expenses. But I think that we don't have time to invent the wheel, and what you've done is given it to us here. So if you're interested in knowing more ways that you could be saving money, instead of going and trying to do all the research, because you very openly say that this is what, like 5 years worth of research, trial and error, that you've discovered these different methods?
It is, and to be honest, it's not a complete book. It's merely a guidebook to get you going, but I'm hoping it will be enough to allow people to know where to start.
Yeah, well, I think it's amazing, and I think that your webinars sound awesome, and I want to encourage everybody to get your book. Go to biteyourbills.com, get this book. It's going to help you. We haven't covered, we've covered like 2 pages worth of what's in here. It's really pretty amazing. And I love the picture on your book, Yolanda, because it's got the piggy bank, but there's the combination lock on the side. And I think for a lot of us, we feel like that's the real deal. That what's the combination to being able to make this work? People ask me all the time, how on earth do you make this thing work and financially? And I think this is a great place to start. And then I would encourage people to check out your free webinars, get the help and support that you're offering to the community.
Yes, the webinars are free. There's at least 3 going on through the 15th. I will probably set up more if there is a demand for it.
Awesome. Yolanda, what a joy and a treat, and I hope that we can have you back on the show. I know you're going to be busy with your webinars and with tax time, but maybe we can have you back on the show to talk about some of the other things here for getting yourself set up to save money on these medical expenses.